Chapter 10. The Problem Child's Alcohol War. It was Louis's fifth autumn at Minerva's, and the year's first snow had fallen a little earlier than usual. People were expecting the coming winter to be especially cold. Some snow still remained in the shade, and a chill wind blew through town as Louis, now a second-year student in the advanced course, walked along with his roommate Owen, bantering. "Crap," said Louis. "It's definitely gonna pile up again this year. And the job of shoveling it always seems to land on us, huh? It's because you have bad luck." "Me? I think you mean you." Owen was now as tall as Louis, and he'd begun to grow out of his scrawniness, too. He must have been working out in secret, trying to reach his goal of joining the Magic Corps. Owen had moved into the advanced course this year and intended to join the Corps when he graduated, so he was busier than ever with schoolwork. The two of them had come to town to restock on writing implements and so on before the first semester exams. Pens, ink, and replacement pen tips were available for purchase at school, too, but Owen said he wanted to buy a Shelgria card to send to his parents, come winter. Louis also wanted to buy some consumables and alcohol on the cheap before the cold really set in. Though Louis was now accustomed to life at Minerva's, he still found drinking spirits the best way to warm up when the weather got cold. Owen had been appalled at first, but now he held his tongue. He probably saw Louis's penchant for jam and spirits as similar to his own love of coffee, luxuries neither of them could go without. Eventually, the pair entered a familiar general store and began rooting around for what they needed. The writing utensils here were always cheap, their prices didn't fluctuate much. But from time to time, the store would stock rarer wares, making it fun just to look around. Today, there was an unusual bottle of ink sitting in the most prominent spot on the shelves. From the label, it appeared to be a high-quality item. A sign beside it read "Big Seller." Louis cocked his head. Why would a bunch of people be buying the same ink? "Oh, I thought everyone at Minerva's knew about it, sir," said the middle-aged owner. "The blue ink is for love charms." The man had a large gut and a friendly tone as he spoke to them over the counter. "Write a love letter to the girl you like in blue ink, and your feelings are sure to be requited. I know of 10 people who have already been successful." A charm? That's stupid, Louis thought, casually checking the price. His eyes went wide. It was 10 times as much as regular black ink. Louis very carefully returned the bottle to the shelf. "Everyone loves charms like that," said Owen, who was busy picking out a card. He didn't sound very interested. "Like the one where you drip morning dew over a flower accessory. Or put a piece of paper with all your wishes on it under your pillow to make them come true." Owen didn't sound very excited about the topic, but his words reminded Louis of something. "Wait, I once saw a piece of paper sticking out from under your pillow with the words "Get into the Magic Corps" written on it." "You mean that was? Why were you looking at that?" "Hey, if you didn't make your roommate clean up your messes, maybe I wouldn't have." "Blame yourself," said Louis casually. After double-checking how much he'd have left to buy alcohol, he proceeded to purchase the cheapest black ink they had, along with a new pen nib. One day at the end of autumn, as the second snow fell at Minerva's, Rosalie Verde hurried toward the infirmary. She'd heard Rutherford had punched Louis and sent him there yet again. Woodman generally left Louis to fend for himself, and Rosalie would come treat him instead. "I'm becoming pretty good at this," she thought. "And getting nowhere with my magecraft abilities." She grimaced as she opened the door to the infirmary. Woodman was gone, which was unusual. Instead, she found Louis, covered in scrapes, doing something with a bunch of bottles. Lionel was trying to stop him, while the prince's attendant Nate was standing to one side, blending in with the wall. As Rosalie stood in the doorway, unsure of who to address first, Lionel spoke up. "Rosalie, perfect timing. Please stop Louis." "What's he done this time?" she asked. "Eh," said Louis unhappily. He looked at her, his lower lip jutting out. He looked vicious and threatening, but that was nothing unusual. Rosalie met his gaze impassively. Louis grunted in irritation and scratched his short hair. "I haven't done anything yet." "Which means you're about to do something." Rosalie looked to Lionel for an explanation. Lionel was a tall boy with stern features, but he was kind to everyone he met. His natural sincerity must have been driving him to stop Louis from getting out of hand. "Louis, just calm down. Don't rush this," he said. "I am calm," Louis insisted. "I'm so angry, I came back around to being calm. I try to be a good, meek student to that stupid old man once in my life, and he starts getting cocky. When have you ever been meek?" "Shut up." That was hardly the proper way to address royalty, but Lionel didn't seem offended. He was earnestly trying to placate his friend. Listening to the two of them gave Rosalie a pretty good idea of what had happened. "Something between you and Rutherford, then?" she asked. Nate, over by the wall, rasped out, "Remember the surprise inspection this morning?" "Yes," she said. They found several bottles of alcohol among his things. While it wasn't codified into law, Rydillian society generally stipulated that a person must be 16 before consuming drinks with low alcohol content, such as wine and beer, and 20 a full adult before imbibing spirits. Louis had probably been carrying around the latter, like an idiot. But that didn't mean it would have been fine if he'd had something weaker. Minerva's mage training institution was a prestigious school. Its halls were basically sacred ground. Of course the faculty was going to confiscate any alcohol they found. Louis, however, didn't seem to understand. He sat there, sulking. "Back home, alcohol is safer to drink than water," he said. Flood control projects were more advanced in Rydil than in other countries, and water and sewer services had developed quite a lot in the last few decades. Improvements lagged behind in the countryside, however, and many believed that alcohol was safer to drink than water, including Louis, apparently. He was from the north, and Rosalie could easily imagine him thinking it was cheaper and faster to drink than to light a fire in the hearth. With how cold it had been these last few days, he'd probably wanted the alcohol to stave off the chill. Rosalie put a hand to her brow and sighed. "You should have known they'd confiscate that stuff. And what is the delinquent trying to do now that Rutherford has taken away all his alcohol?" Louis lifted one of the glass jars and swished around the liquid inside as his lips twitched up. So long as he stayed quiet, he had a pretty, girlish face. But now he wore an evil, scheming grin. "Tonight, I'm gonna sneak into the old man's lab and swap this for the stuff he took away." "And what's in there?" she asked. "Water mixed with a laxative. I bet that old jerk is gonna have a big feast to go with all the alcohol he took from me. So I'll loosen up his bowels and make him really squirm." Louis Miller's creed was that, when crossed, he would pay the culprit back double. Some students had tried to make fun of him for his humble origins, but every single one had been sent packing, without exception. The jam hunting incident in the cafeteria, the chucking of Terence Abernathy into the cesspit, the attempted smoking of Adolf Ferron, all were hot topics around school. "I don't trust the taps anyway," said Louis. "Who knows what kind of crap someone could put in there? Alcohol is way safer." "I see," said Rosalie, voice lower than usual. She glanced at Lionel, expressionless. "Conversation will get us nowhere. Let's leave him to his devices, sir." "Tcharem?" But Rosalie, Lionel trailed off as he noticed the chill emanating from her. "Let's get going," she said to the prince and his attendant, before walking to the exit. Before she left, Louis called after her. "Hey, Rosalie, wait a second." She stopped and turned around. Louis nimbly popped out of his seat, then got right up in her face and stared at her. That face, it'd be handsome, if only he'd shut up, was right in front of hers now, a mischievous glint in his greyish-purple eyes. Flustered, Rosalie stood there as dry, cracked fingers brushed her cheek, then plucked out the pin holding her hair to the side. "I'm borrowing this. It'll help me pick the lock." As the awful brat grinned, Rosalie fixed him with the coldest stare she'd ever given. "I hope you get the thrashing of your life, problem child of Minerva's." The stars of the winter sky glittered like silver sand as the full moon softly shone through the clouds, in sight 1 minute and out the next. It was a beautiful scene, the kind to make a person stop what they were doing and look up, entranced. Louis, however, dressed in all black, didn't even spare a glance for it as he headed straight for the research building. It was a still night, which posed a slight problem for Louis, since he was trying to sneak inside unnoticed. He would have liked some wind to help hide his footsteps. He stopped in front of the school gate. Naturally, it was locked. It wasn't so high that he couldn't climb his way over it, but the top part was spiked like spears, to prevent intruders. The spikes even had hooks on the end to prevent easy removal, once impaled. Louis removed the hairpin from his short hair and used a quick chant to produce a small flame. Relying on its illumination, he stuck the pin into the lock's keyhole. The flame wasn't strong enough to light up the keyhole all the way to the back, but you could get surprisingly far with such things by feel alone. After grappling with it for a few minutes, Louis heard the lock click open and grinned. That was easy. He opened the gate a tiny bit and slipped inside. All right, here's where the real challenge begins. He already knew a teacher would be patrolling the first floor. Climbing up the wall and going in through a window would be safer. Fortunately, his destination, Gideon Rutherford's lab on the third floor, had its window open. Rutherford enjoyed smoking, and he often left the window open for ventilation, even in the winter. Louis climbed up a nearby tree, then jumped from a branch to an ornament on a second-floor balcony, clinging to it. The motion caused the bottles hanging from his waist to clack together. Ooh! Should have wrapped them in cloth. These bottles were the same as the confiscated ones, except they had water laced with laxative inside them. His objective was to swap them out with the other set. He couldn't have them breaking on his way there. Louis was currently hanging onto the side of the balcony with both hands. He would have liked to give himself a nice swing and use the bounce backward to get up onto the balcony, but the bottles would likely break from all the jostling. Instead, he had to carefully pull himself up using arm strength alone. You know what would be perfect here? Flight magecraft. Using magecraft to propel oneself freely through the air would be extremely convenient, but the technique required very delicate mana control and a superb sense of balance. It consumed a great deal of mana, too, meaning you ran the risk of falling out of the sky mid-flight. It was a very difficult spell to use. Louis had been splitting most of his time between practicing attack magecraft and strengthening his barrier techniques, but once he had those under control, he swore to himself that he'd learn flight magecraft too. If he could fly, he could literally look down on those who metaphorically looked down on him. It had to feel amazing. Getting to Goa's place would become much easier as well, and flight was great for skipping out on boring ceremonies. Maybe he could take Rosalie and Lionel along, and they could all skip class together way up in the sky. That sounded nice. Nah, forget about Lionel. He's way too bulky to be worth the trouble. He was thinking about this and pulling himself up, when he suddenly heard voices from above. Louis was right below the window to his destination, and the sound was coming from inside. Are you kidding me? The old man's supposed to be in a different room right now, thought Louis, confused. He'd done his homework on this and everything. Then he remembered Rosalie's words. I hope you get the thrashing of your life, problem child of Minerva's. Damn it, Rosalie. She must have known Rutherford would be in his lab tonight. He doubted she'd told the man about his scheme. But she hadn't told Louis that he'd be in his lab, either. Though she wasn't scared of Louis, she didn't take his side in such things. She simply maintained a casual distance. That was how Rosalie Verde operated. Seriously, that woman is something else. As Louis wondered what to do next, he sidled over to the wall and pressed his ear up against it. It sounded like Rutherford and Macregan were in the room, talking. Oh, where's that alcohol from? I thought you didn't drink. Macregan spoke in his usual tone, playing the fool, as always. Rutherford gave him a brusque reply. Took it from the brat. Ah. And you didn't get rid of it because I'd be amenable to returning it if he'd just write me a letter of apology, like an honest child. Who'd ever write you an apology letter, you stupid old rat? Louis mentally cursed. Anyway, this is a problem. 2 old men in the same room means they're gonna be talking forever. Was it best to leave and come back? No. He could already hear Rosalie teasing him about his failed mission. Louis wanted to show off the bottles and brag that it had been a piece of cake to get them back. Just get out of here, stupid old men. He listened more closely and heard Rutherford exhale. He must have been smoking his pipe, as usual. The smell of its sweet smoke drifted outside the window. I'm starting to hate this job, and all because of that brat, he grumbled. He's such a handful. I see. You're quite soft on Miller, remarked MacRagan. What? Have you gone senile? Louis found himself agreeing with the old rat. Rutherford had done nothing but frustrate and torture him ever since he'd come to Minerva's. The old man thought nothing of punching Louis in the head with his full strength. What about that was soft? As Louis scrunched his nose up and frowned, the two men continued. But you do look after him, said MacRagan. The boy is a genius. He'll be a famous mage, with his name in the history books one day. Louis nearly slid off the wall. Are you for real, old man? Did you just go insane? Are you going to die tomorrow? He wondered, flabbergasted. Tobacco smoke drifted overhead, melting into the night's darkness. Eventually, Rutherford continued, his voice earnest. However, he is oblivious to the kindness other people show him. Louis's fingers twitched as they held the wall. Back when he'd first enrolled, he could have easily declared that he'd received no kindness at all from the people at Minerva's. But that wasn't true anymore. Now several people came to mind. Rosalie. Lionel. His roommate Owen. The people at Goara's place. He's extremely sensitive to hostility, but he doesn't recognize kindness. He probably doesn't even know how Prince Lionel and Rosalie Verde come to me and explain what happened every time he causes a problem. What was that? Louis clenched his teeth. He didn't know those two had been covering for him behind his back. He'd had no idea. But how could he have known? Neither of them had ever said anything to him. All he ever got from them were things like calm down and stop being so reckless. Those who ignore the kindness of others hit a wall eventually. One day, he'll be all alone. Isolated. Louis was confident in his own talents and abilities. Because of that, he'd always looked down on the weak banding together and trying to curry favor with the strong. Louis was different from them. He didn't need to join hands with others or resort to flattery. He could manage on his own. So why did Rutherford's words stab him like a knife to the heart? As he dug deep, trying to find the reason, his nose suddenly started to tickle. Achoo, oh! With a sniffle, Louis slowly looked up. And there, with one elbow on the window frame and a pipe in his mouth, was a wicked, bushy-browed old man whose eyes glinted far too sharply for someone his age. It was Gideon Rutherford, the mage of violet smoke. Rutherford's lips curled around his pipe, forming a grin. Hey, brat. Nice night, eh? Only then did Louis realize something was wrong with his body. For whatever reason, his nose was incredibly itchy. He assumed the man had imbued his pipe smoke with a sneeze-inducing effect. Rutherford's tobacco smoke could pass through barriers. And Louis hadn't yet devised one capable of blocking it. Louis sneezed again and again as he clung to the wall. He glared up at Rutherford, tears in his eyes. Damn you, old rat. Achoo, you knew I was here the whole time, achoo. Rutherford looked at him, exasperated. You sneeze like a girl. I'm gonna beat that decrepit rat body of yours into a coffin right now and send you straight to the church. Achoo, gare. Louis's last sneeze had thrown him off balance. His right hand shot out to grab a protrusion in the wall. But one hand couldn't hold him there for very long. Rutherford grinned and took a pleasant pull from his pipe. Say I'm sorry, Mr. Rutherford, and I'll let you off with a 30-page apology letter. Screw you, achoo. Louis searched for a way out of this situation. He was so angry, he felt like his blood vessels would burst. He couldn't fly, but he had some proficiency with wind magecraft. He could jump down, then cushion his fall with a gust at the moment of impact. Unfortunately, another sneeze easily cut off his incantation. He started the chant again but found it was no use. He was sneezing too much. Old man. Bastard. Achoo. Curse me all you want, said Rutherford, but your adorable sneezes are rather ruining the effect. Not very intimidating, problem child. He twirled his pipe in his hand, swirling smoke around. Louis, in an astonishing display of grip strength, stubbornness, and spite, continued to hang from the wall by one hand. His efforts were in vain, however. After an hour, his strength ran out and he fell to the ground where he lay, beaten and spasming. Rutherford dragged him away, bound him to a chair, and forced him to spend the entire night writing a 100-page letter of apology. Rumors about Louis Miller's infiltration of the research building spread like wildfire, but nobody was particularly surprised. Most of the students at Minerva's, Rosalie among them, just saw it as another in a long line of Louis-related incidents. He really can't help but cause trouble, she thought. The next day, Louis was absent from class, which was unusual. Rosalie figured that was an indication of how thorough a beating he'd gotten from Rutherford. The day after that, Rosalie got up a little earlier than usual. She left her dormitory, then took a window seat in the lounge. She removed a teapot from her basket, as well as homemade scones, which she arranged on the table. She wasn't very good at things like baking, but the results this time were decent. The scones had risen nicely and had cooked to a pleasing golden brown. I think this will do, she thought as she looked at the spread before her. Then she heard someone throw open the lounge door. Louis stomped over to her. Fresh scrapes and bruises were nothing new, but the amount of gauze and bandages he wore today pained her. His dry chestnut hair was more bedraggled than usual, frizzing out in various places, and his greyish-purple eyes gave off a dangerous glint. To put it diplomatically, he looked unapproachable, like he'd lash out and punch anyone who walked by, no matter who they were. The other students chatting in the lounge quickly shuffled out of the room as the delinquent arrived. Louis hurried over and sat down next to her. Rosalie, he said. She didn't reply as she poured tea into her own cup. Rosalie, he said again. She remained silent as she took a sip of the tea. Can you just look at me? Deciding it would be childish to continue, Rosalie put her cup back on her saucer and turned to face him. Did you get it back? That precious alcohol of yours. Do you even have to ask? Look at me. Yes, you're hurt all over. Wounds dotted Louis's entire body, but the worst was his right hand. It was all wrapped up in a bandage. Rutherford must have really gotten the better of him. The wrapping was loose and unpracticed. Rosalie decided she'd fix it for him later. Louis thrust his left hand, relatively unharmed, in her face. Here. In his palm was a single hairpin. But not the one Louis had plucked from her hair 2 days before. Hers had been plain and simple, but this one had been delicately worked to resemble a flower. Rosalie knew that Louis worked part-time despite also attending school. What brought this on? She asked. Louis looked away awkwardly. After a long, hesitant pause, he muttered, I heard from the old man. Your dad. Ah, the aquamancy mage. He contributed a lot to waterworks projects. Rosalie's father, Bertrand Verde, was famed for his accomplishments. He'd calmed overflowing rivers and stabilized flood control projects, yes, but he was also deeply involved in the development of water and sewage systems. It would be no exaggeration to say that the presence of such things in the kingdom of Riddil was mostly thanks to him. And yet Louis had told Rosalie that he couldn't trust those systems. Sorry, he said. To think, the problem child of Minerva's himself, frowning uncomfortably and apologizing, a rare sight indeed, she thought, feeling a keen admiration well up in her as she took the hairpin. She didn't think it suited her, the pretty flower ornament was too fancy for a plain girl like her. But she wanted to make sure he knew that she'd accepted his apology. So she put it in her hair anyway. It's wonderful. Thank you, she said with a faint smile. She pushed the plate of scones over to him. He probably hadn't eaten anything since the day before. His stomach had been growling since he arrived. As if to hide his embarrassment, Louis picked up a scone and took a big bite out of it. This is a weird kind of bread, he remarked. It's called a scone. And it's closer to a biscuit than to bread. You split it down the middle and spread jam on it. Dries out my mouth. Seems filling, though. Rosalie poured some tea into an empty cup and placed it in front of him. Louis frowned, staring at it. Still averse to tap water, she asked. I boiled it. It's not that. Louis wore a hard expression. After a moment, he seemed to resolve himself and took a sip. The creases in his brow deepened. I just don't like stuff like tea. Or coffee. You know, bitter stuff. Louis picked up the jar of strawberry jam meant for spreading. Using a spoon, he took out a big scoop and plopped it into his teacup. When he sipped the jam-infused tea, he let out a satisfied sigh and relaxed. He looked younger than he usually did. To hide the smile threatening to show on her face, Rosalie put her own cup to her lips. As Louis reached for a second scone, he glanced at her. Then he grinned. Looks good on you. I figured it would. The fingers holding her cup shook. You should wear it for a while. She wished he'd stop doing that. It wasn't good for her heart. Rosalie returned her cup to her saucer and looked down. Louis, seeming to take that as a sign that she was upset, got a little flustered. Rosalie, he said. Rosalie? Come on, Rosalie. Are you still mad? No. It's nothing, she replied, voice hard, faking calm as she took a scone. Please, she thought as she spread some jam on it, don't let my face be red right now.